You took that photo, there's a tiny, very, very tiny head there, a couple millimeters.
Right.
You took that, then what did you do?
And then I took a loop to it, and I did a drawing about that large.
A tiny little drawing.
Well, maybe a little bit, about that big. And then I blew that drawing up and used that to transfer to the large paper.
Well, so what does it reflect, do you think? The problematic nature of trying to work from such a small photograph and make such a big head?
I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's really interesting because it's a kind of elevated sort of looking. You could have, it's basically interpolation without an algorithm, right? I mean, you did that without I mean, you had a system, but it was really sort of intuitive, fluid.
Well, the system was based on knowing how to draw faces.
Do you feel like you accurately represented her face in this, or do you think this is something wholly different?
Pretty darn close, but since it wasn't a direct tracing off the photograph, I'm sure that there's probably a lot of distortion.
A couple of things I know, like, to me in the picture it seems like she's looking to our left, and I don't know if you chose it or if it just happened she's looking to our right in your picture. And even just the emotion on the face, I feel like, you know, I could see your interpretation of it.
I guess I'm trying to understand the point of doing this. Because if I didn't know the system by which you're making something, I might just think, oh, it's a sort of photo-derived large drawing.
And not very good.
Well, and how interesting is it?
I'm thinking of the drawing as a tool rather than as a way to achieve.
Tool to what? For what?
As a tool to try to do just that, to see how much invention and to see what kind of things I'm inventing.
I spent my life doing this stuff.
Right.
Walking with rocks in your shoes can be interesting. You know, degree of difficulty can be interesting. This image has almost nothing to do with what I can see with my naked eye of that woman there. Plus, it's not a very good drawing. That, you know, that's I'm not knocking you. I'm just saying somebody who spends their life trying to make pictures of people, whether it's from photographs or not, really learn to look. I mean, that's what spending your life doing something gives you. You look at a fucking nose and you understand it. You know, it's like the map. It's like a world right there. I find what's happening here believable. You know, just that you understood that partly because you were no longer burdened with the idea of a face. People who don't spend their life drawing think there's a huge difference between human things and inanimate things. But that's not true for people who spend their life representing things with their hand. So, I don't know. What subvert the idea of looking at a photograph and trying to understand what you're picturing?
I was interested in this notion of these sort of anonymous people in these photographs. You know, these people who were apparently at these important life stages of my life and sort of passed through. And what could you know about them? What's it?
Extras.
Extras in your life. Absolutely. That was sort of the original conception for it. And then I think it moved to more about drawing. But I still didn't like that idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is the problem. I mean, that photograph, forgive me, is a lot more interesting than this drawing. The drawing's really boring.
You know, in some ways it seems too easy to just blow the photograph up and show it and say, you do the interpolation.
But you're like somebody who wants to get into writing and so sits down and tries to write a novel. And I mean, again, I sound more condescending than I intend.
You've stopped, you know, to some degree, and not given us, or not given me personally, the information that I almost think I deserve by having it this size. It's a luxury to be able to see it, you know, on this monstrous scale.
It's the artist finding enough stuff, having an interesting enough sensibility to make it interesting. You're not doing that.
This is just, I went on a trip to Georgia, and this is following one girl from upstate New York, and the things that she sees as she's in the South for the first time. But I did want to get the whole feel of this journey to the South and what she saw on the way, what I saw, what I was touched by, and what made me feel uncomfortable, and that I wanted to capture.
I mean, that picture on the lower left, the far lower left, is a great picture for a lot of reasons, not necessarily connected to your project. I mean, it's an admirable project, and potentially ambitious, depending on what your next move is. Because these probably aren't the pictures, but these are good sketches for the pictures you would go back and get. I mean, because what you're talking about is, and I think what you're talking about, what you're imaging, is interesting difference in the flavors of racism. Say.
Well, do you think, I mean, does it occur to you that the racist pictures are the far more interesting photographs?
Are those racist?
Well, I don't know.
No, I shouldn't say that.
But
I think that's the wrong.
But it's the more complicated ones, the ones that capture something that's a little more complex, and even compositionally more complex. I mean, it's almost like when you're looking through it and you see something that is simple and pat, you frame it in this pat way, and
Yeah,
it's really
true.
really familiar, conventional framing. And then when it's a little more complex, it's actually visually more complex.
I think probably what I wanted to do is get white people, I guess, is what I want to kind of start thinking about if they haven't already. What it might be like to be that one black person surrounded by a bunch of white people, to not be, I don't know, to be on the other side for once. I feel like those girls lying out there never really thought, don't you feel a little uncomfortable just lazing around doing nothing, and every restaurant
What are they supposed to do?
just think about it.
Stand around? Well, how do you know they're not laying there thinking about it?
I don't think they are, but I honestly don't think
When I lay in the sun, I'm always thinking about racism.
I'll say that I feel like this looks cliche to me, it does. I mean, a lot of the ones on the right. But yet, when I did see it, I did want to take a picture.
Sure.
No, it's such a naive position. It's so unthought out. I find it impossible to critique something that's so formative is not a word. It's like unknowing.
Well,
And I was chastising Danny for calling one of the photographs great, because it's a very interesting photograph, but it reminds me of what I said earlier about Artigue making photographs as a baby. You may have a wonderful sensibility. I don't know. I'm certainly not smart enough to judge, but I think the problem with photography is that you can give a photograph, to use Chris's term, to a dog, and the dog will take some interesting pictures. I'm not comparing you to a dog.
all right. I don't want to even have this conversation.
No,
wait a minute.
I shouldn't think we should
But
have it about
Nicole.
when you tell me that woman's thinking, I believe you, because she looks like she's thinking. I'm not sure what that means.